Kia ora, good evening. The rights of the consumer have been given a boost with legislation that came into effect yesterday.
Changes under the Consumer Law Reform Bill mean consumers have been granted the same rights whether their purchases are made online, in a store, by auction, over the phone or by any other method. More information now must be provided on protections offered under an extended warranty. Consumers now have the right to cancel it within 5 working days. Businesses must now identify themselves as traders when selling online. A 5-day calling-off period will apply to uninvited direct sales, including door-to-door and telephone sales. The Consumers Guarantees Act will apply when consumers buy goods or services from a business by competitive tender or auction, whether online or not. And if goods have been arranged to be delivered by a trader, they must arrive on time and in good condition.
Construction of Invercargill's new airport terminal building will be carried out by a Southern construction company. The Invercargill-based Amalgamated Builders Limited has been awarded the main construction contract as part of the $13 million terminal upgrade. ABL were selected over a number of competing local and national-based companies in a selection process that began in February. Demolition of the old terminal building and construction of the new is expected to be underway in July, with the new facility ready to welcome passengers by Christmas 2015. Former Institute of Chartered Accountants Tax Director Craig McAllister says he's more than happy to bend politicians' ears on taxation policy if they come calling. Mr McAllister was a key contributor to a paper prepared by the Institute of Chartered Accountants that explored lowering the taxation compliance costs of small businesses. Labour's Revenue and Small Business spokesperson David Clark consulted with the Invercargill-based taxation principal just last week. Hunter Andrews asked Mr McAllister about the document he contributed to and Labour's key capital gains tax policy.
Well, the whole objective was to try and put your compliance down to no more than 1 hour per month. That was what we were trying to achieve. So the compliance costs in that alone would be the saving of your year-end accounts, for example, which could be $2,000 or $3,000 for a small business. So by taking that, by giving that back to the small business, it then gives them a bit more perhaps budget to do other things to develop and grow their business, or they might want to engage a chartered accountant to focus more on their management accounting and tell them what are their more profitable parts of their business or what parts of the business aren't so profitable. So that was all linked in with changing the focus on the provision of accounting services to small business away from tax compliance onto something that's more value-added thing, and using the money that they save from tax compliance to spend on growing and developing their business.
Also, I guess, couldn't go without mentioning the capital gains tax. Labor's been very big with capital gains tax.
That's right, Labor have. They've advocated a policy on capital gains tax. It's broadly what you'd expect to see. There's no capital gains tax on your private dwelling, and there will be capital gains taxes on all your other property types. They're also maintain it's going to be a separate tax, so it's going to be set at 15%, so it won't be taxed along with your ordinary income, and the reason why they're doing that is to avoid what they call lock-up. So there's a general concern with people that are opposed to a capital gains tax that capital gains tax causes this lock-in effect. In other words, people are reluctant to sell their assets because they've got a tax liability on it. So by treating it as a separate tax and having a lower rate is designed to overcome that lock-in effect. Proof of the pudding with capital gains taxes is always in the detailed design and how that's going to play out. At this stage, the Labor policy looks very well thought through, and they've got a fairly firm policy in place. So they're obviously committed to going ahead with that.
Do you think it can be a struggle, though, to get the public in general to understand issues of taxation? And I strike a lot of people that wouldn't really know what a capital gains tax was, to be honest.
I think capital gains tax is a little bit misunderstood in the sense that to actually fully understand how the tax is going to impact on us, we need to understand the detailed design. And if the detailed design has too many exemptions or opt-out of the tax, then it starts to get very complex and it opens up opportunities for planning and all the rest of it. And the concern that's often expressed with the capital gains tax is it doesn't actually collect the amount of revenue that we're trying to collect with the tax, that it's too easily avoided. And those views are quite right if the tax is overly complicated. But if you design a tax that sort of sits with our mantra of broad-based low rates, so it's a fairly simple, straightforward tax with few exemptions, then it might be quite an effective tax. Personally, I think if we're going to do a capital gains tax, I'd like to see a trade-off for our other taxes. So we say, well, okay, consistent with our broad-based low rate approach, what we do is we overlay a capital gains tax with that, but we will then reduce taxes overall. So instead of our top personal marginal tax rate being what it is currently, we might drop it 5 or 6% as a trade-off for the fact that we're also now taxing capital gains as well.
Weather predictors are warning the lower part of the South Island is set for a wintry blast. Southerners can expect a real bite in the year, a drop in temperatures, strong wind and wintry showers. The cool blast is expected to bring wintry showers and snow to 400 metres, which could affect several roads in the southern region, including Milford Road. Weather is expected to settle again as we head into the weekend. Stay with us, still to come, awards for Coronet Peak, and this week we celebrate New Zealand's unpaid workforce. Welcome back. Queenstown Airport is continuing to see air travel growth with a 4.7% increase on passenger numbers this May compared to last. Total passenger numbers were up 4%. That's an increase of more than 47,500 passengers for the year. International tourists proved to be the biggest leader with a strong month-on-month growth, increasing 41.2% on May 2013. May is shoulder season for the tourism destination and visitor numbers are expected to boom over the coming winter months as ski season gets underway. Queenstown Airport has been rated as one of the world's top 10 scenic airport approaches for 2014 by private jet booking company privatefly.com, along with Gibraltar, London, Rio de Janeiro and LA. And the airport's set to commence evening flights in around a year's time. Meanwhile, Queenstown's Coronet Peak ski area has been awarded the 2013 Green Ribbon Award, taking top honours in the large business leadership category. The award category covers waste reduction, carbon emissions, energy use and fuel consumption. And ski area manager Ross Copeland says staff put in a lot of hard work to deliver a great sustainable business strategy. Staff education on environmental issues and an annual mountain-wide clean-up every summer are just two initiatives that ensure staff walk the talk. The ski area has also reduced its electricity usage by 10% and fuel consumption of 60,000 litres as part of the efforts to be green. Nationalist MP and Chair of the Finance and Expenditure Select Committee, Paul Goldsmith, says this election year budget has been well received. Hunter Andrews asked the visiting MP about the behind-the-scenes committee work that goes into preparing the final budget document.
I think people see that we're back in surplus after a long period in deficit, and that's very important. And it takes the pressure off the Reserve Bank and interest rates, and it enables us to invest wisely when we have spare capacity. But getting back into surplus is very important. So I think that we're getting a big tick from the electorate on that score. And then we're also able to invest in families a little bit in the budget. And so the free doctors' visits for under 13s, I think, has been very well received.
How was preparation for this year's budget different, given that it is an election year? The Finance and Expenditure Committee, was it the intent to bring out a budget similar to this?
Well, I think in the past there has been a tendencies, going back a long way in New Zealand history, to have election year budgets where you just did a big spend up and face the consequences the next year. We certainly haven't done that. This has been a very disciplined government, and I think that's part of the appeal of John Key and Bill English, in that they've been sensible and predictable. And so we've delivered stable government. So people have been able to look and see, okay, there's a certain logic to what they're doing, which is getting back to surplus, building a more competitive economy through all the work of the business growth agenda, which Stephen Joyce has been focused on, rebuilding Christchurch, and getting better results out of the public service. We've said what we've been doing, we've been consistent, and there's no huge surprises, there's no lurching left or right or anything like that. It's just it's working away consistently, and that I think has been very successful. And when we look at New Zealand's performance compared with many other developed countries that we've compared ourselves with, I think we're in good stead at the moment.
Do you think it's a good time to talk about a 4-year term for governments? You've mentioned that some governments do work and spend a lot in that third year. Do you think that's a good enough reason to start looking at 4 years?
Yeah, well, I think that there was a constitutional review and there was widespread interest in that issue. There are pluses and minuses. New Zealand doesn't have checks and balances to the same degree. We don't have an upper house. We don't have an independent president or anything like that, and we don't have regional governments either. So, the one house of parliament does have enormous power, and so that has been the argument for having an election every 3 years, so people can toss them out if they're no good. But the downside is, you're right, it comes around very quickly. And in the past, some governments have been, very focused, and you have to be very focused on maintaining public support.
This week is National Volunteer Week. In Invercargill, Volunteer South has been running for just 12 months and matched personalities, interests and skills with not-for-profit groups or organisations needing a hand. They place a small portion of volunteers compared to donated time that's recruited outside the organisation, and estimate volunteer numbers are at least 5 times what they see through their office.
Numbers are steadily increasing. We've got about 320 on the books now, all walks of life. A lot from international students, older people in different backgrounds. Some want to increase their work experience, practice the language, build self-confidence. There's a whole range of reasons.
Are you finding with the international students from SIT that they have perhaps a different ethos or upbringing when it comes back to giving back to the community? Yeah,
what I found is a lot of them, their background is family orientated. And a lot of their skills they're more respectful to the family and older people. Yeah, they're good workers.
And how have they been received in the volunteer roles, Tony?
Most of them are quite good once we get them in. A lot of people are worried about their language skills. Can they be understood, especially in public roles where they're dealing with the public and answering phones and that sort of thing. But generally they're pretty good. Yeah.
How many hours in a week do you think would be unpaid volunteer hours that are being delivered in the community through the service?
It'd be thousands. It's up to each individual and organisation to work out how many hours they want. Some might just do an hour or two a day, some might do 2 hours a day every day of the week.
If volunteers weren't providing the service, what sort of impact do you think it could have on the local economy and for the region?
It'll be huge. If you look at average wage, $15, $18, whatever it is these days, and each person's doing 2 hours a day, there's thousands of dollars there. Sports would fall over, sports clubs, leadership for scouts and guides, big buddy program, mentoring sort of thing, counselling services. It's a huge impact.
Sport follows the weather, which is along next from the news team. Good night.